feminists for years have been since like the 70s have been banking on this argument that gender is a social construct and that all aspects of gender performance are social constructs, that any difference between men and women is all social constructs. And they always couch it in terms of it's all part of like the patriarchy and this conspiracy to keep women down, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
They don't, for most feminists, don't argue that there's any biological, that any behaviors that are classified as feminine or masculine have any sort of biological root.
Right.
They say
It's
everything's a social
all
construct.
social construct. Yeah.
Right. And so, but then you have this problem. The transgender movement comes along because you have gender dysphoria. And gender dysphoria, if it's biological, which all the science points to it as being biological, and then you have people who, like, for example, you have a man who has gender dysphoria and wants to be a woman, and thus they want to participate and exhibit behaviors that are considered classically feminine. This completely destroys the feminist argument because it means one of two things. It either means A, that there are aspects of femininity that are biological, and this would be evidence of it, and that gender is not biological, or it means that all the trans people are basically performative. They're not actually feeling quote unquote feminine. They're just want to copy the behaviors and the stereotypes that they see as feminine. And since
it's a sad situation.
Right, and since the feminists are coming at it with this completely wrong, unscientific idea that all gender is social, that's the only way they could possibly perceive trans people. There's no other way for them to do it because that's the hole they've buried themselves into.
That's kind of the position you want to get them to take whenever you engage in this debate. You want to get them to take a position on either side of that. That is where are the biological components and where are the performative components? And as soon as you lay that out, your position becomes locked in by sheer logic. I mean,
right, and then and the flip side is that the Wokistan people that are trans activists, they completely refuse to answer this question because they know if they do, they'll have to admit that there are components of gender that are biological. But then if they do that, then you say, well, wait a minute. How do you know that differences in society between men and women in terms of like what kind of jobs that men and women are attracted to, in terms of behaviors, how do you know that that's not based in some aspect of biology? Because they don't want to accept that. So this is the problem, is that the trans activists want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to say that, oh, this, people are born with this identity and they should be allowed to switch, but also there's no biological distinction between, men and women in terms of their behavior. It's completely contradictory and makes no sense. So for as stupid as TERFs are, at least they are being consistent with their own values and principles.
Yeah. Well, what are we going to do? How do we get them to be ideologically consistent?
You can't, because most people are only ideologically consistent if it
helps their cause.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
isn't it funny? Science and ideological consistency are the first thing out the window whenever you engage in these kind of debates. The first thing to go is like logic and reason.
It's really sad because, and as Contra talked about later in this video, like when you look at J.K. Rowling and Maya Forster, it's not like they have a very consistent worldview and that's why they have these beliefs about transgender people. And they're like, well, I'm just being consistent. It's not like that. It's that they suffered some form of abuse or trauma from a man.
Oh, really?
Thus,
that's the Maya situation. So it's even sadder. Oh my God.
Right. No, it's very sad that generally these TERFs are women who have suffered abuse at the hands of a man. And thus that's why they feel that they need the safety of quote unquote female only spaces.
It's really weird because, like, as a man, I can 100% respect that. Like, if I understand that a woman's been traumatized by some other men and she's like, doesn't want me around, I'm out of there. Like, I don't want to make someone suffering worse. Like, what the hell?
Right. Yeah. But my point was that the people that are TERFs, they don't come to this conclusion because it's consistent with their ideology. There's some other factor that kind of makes them not want to go along with trans stuff, and thus they just happen to decide on the side that's consistent with their argument because it helps them, it benefits them.
Right. So it's just by chance that they're being consistent.
Yes.
They're like, oh, this is how I feel, and thankfully I get to be consistent this time. It's being consistent is a fucking chore. I know it all the time. Like, you and I are always forcing each other to be consistent. I'd much rather be right than be consistent. Okay. Right just feels right.
Dianatos for £5 says, whenever someone tells me something is a social construct, I say that society is a biological construct. That's a good one. I like
not
that.
Untrue.
Yeah, it's completely true. Completely true.
There's a feedback loop, a definite feedback loop between biology and social and society. Yeah.
Dress however you please. Call yourself whatever you like. She's belittling what it actually means to be trans, reducing it to a change of name and costume. It's similar to the language of casual homophobes. For example, the homophobic equivalent of Joanne's tweet might read, "Choose whatever lifestyle you want. Indulge your sexual preferences with any consenting adult in the privacy of your own bedroom. But force Christians out of their jobs for stating that marriage is between a man and a woman? Hashtag I stand with Kim Davis."
So it's interesting because if we remove the hashtag, I don't have a problem with the tweet. This is supposed to show how the tweet's problematic. I mean, do you? I don't have a problem with this tweet.
Not really, but I mean, it really depends. If I could see like a homophobe saying that.
Oh, no, of course. Of course. I mean, the issue is, and why I think this is dishonest, I mean, I don't know, because she doesn't talk about what Maya Forster's job was. If she had some job, that would mean that she'd have to interact with trans people and thus would be bigoted towards them. Maybe that's an issue of why she shouldn't have that job. But because that was the whole problem with Kim Davis. It wasn't that, oh, she should be fired because she doesn't believe in gay marriage. It was she was literally
she couldn't do her fucking job.
Yeah, it was literally her job to hand out marriage certificates, and she wouldn't do it to gay people, even though the law said she had to. Yeah, that's the issue.
Kim Davis was some clerk in some office that wouldn't give marriage certificates to gay couples after, I believe, gay marriage had been made legal. She was like the last holdout. So the conservatives rallied behind her for doing this. But I mean, she was literally not doing her job. It's like, okay, if you have a problem with that, get a different job, for heaven's sakes, you know? Like, you're not going to be a stripper if you don't like taking off your clothes, right? I mean, there's certain jobs that require you to do certain things.
So, but can you guess where the problem is that in the tweet that Contra's going to point to?
This problem here?
Yeah. What in this tweet? What word is the problematic word in this tweet?
Sexual preference.
Yes.
I know. That's a buzzword now. That's a fucking right there. Oh my God. Got him. Bigot. Preference. Use the wrong word. The word police. Woo, woo.
It's so funny because for like 30 years, that was the word you were supposed to use to describe sexual preferences, right? But now it's like, oh, well, you're saying it's just a preference? Oh, that's so homophobic. That's so bigoted.
Yeah,
it's not a preference.
Like, there's a million books that use that terminology. Is every writer supposed to go out and like update their back catalog now?
And again,
the word police are evil.
And again, they're making the opposite argument that they made in the past, because if they're saying that it's not a sexual preference, that means, okay, that means you were born fixed this way. So how exactly are they claiming that sexual orientation is biological, but that's the only aspect of gender that's biological? There's no other aspects of human behavior that's biological except for sexual orientation. Like, it's so hypocritical that whenever they want to advocate for protection and rights for something, it's like, oh, well, this is a characteristic that's biological and immutable. But whenever they want to change some aspect of people's behavior in society. Oh, well, that's just societal. You know, you weren't born that way.
So many preferences are biological. I like bubblegum ice cream. I can't imagine. That's not like I didn't fucking social construct myself into that. Right?
Right.
I dream about it at night.
I mean, I agree that, you know, those who like bubblegum ice cream should all be shipped off to Siberia, but that's a different.
Oh man, that's biological essentialism. You're evil. You can't do that.
Bubblegum ice cream is not real ice cream. Okay.
Bubblegum ice cream is delicious.
Bubblegum is not a flavor you eat. It's a flavor you chew and then spit out.
My second favorite ice cream is banana ice cream. And one time I was eating banana ice cream and bubblegum next to each other. And I was like, if I closed my eyes, I couldn't tell the difference between these. They're actually exactly the same.
Wait, those flavors are so different from each other.
No, they aren't. They aren't. If you did a blind taste test, I don't think you could tell the difference.
Well, I mean, look, I hate bananas, so maybe that explains why I think this bubblegum ice cream is disgusting.
They're so similar. I would eat banana ice cream and bubblegum ice cream together. And oh God, it's so good. I made banana and bubblegum ice cream sandwiches. Oh my God, it's so good.
Oh, I'm
anyway,
vomit.
I just did that to gross you out. Let's move on.
And a sausage cannot make a baby. Checkmate the gays. It's just science. Homophobes trivialize what it is to be gay. They refer to it as sexual preference.
I can't help it. ContraPoints is hilarious. I just can't help it. I can't help it.
Yeah, that's part of her appeal.
Banging those wieners together. Ah, mwah, comedy gold. All comedy is
Adam
so
is a simple man.
Comedy is so simple, guys. People try to complicate it. Like people try to write their PhD on comedy. Comedy's simple. Comedy is based on surprise. Banging the wieners together out of nowhere. Surprising. Surprising as hell.
Them, yes.
Why was she blurring one?
Because it makes it look more phallic. That's the joke. That's the comedy at.
I don't know. It was good.
Preferences or a lifestyle or what you do in the bedroom. We don't tell straight people to keep their lifestyle in the bedroom.
What are you talking about? Fucking, we don't like PDA either.
No.
Get a room is a popular phrase, okay? Very popular. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
But we should. Clearly, the straights are not oppressed enough. Being gay is more than what you do in the bedroom. It's also...
Well, there's also an issue here, too, with you have to give people ground to retreat to, okay? You can't say submit or die. There has to be some ground you let them go to. And so for generally Christians or people who have religious beliefs against gay marriage or gay people in general, even though I disagree with them completely, you have to give them the ground to retreat to say, okay, well, you know, they should be allowed to do whatever they want in their privacy of their homes or their bedrooms or whatever. You have to give them that ground because those are people that are never going to completely be on board with your belief system. That's the compromise.
Totally.
So you can't just say, oh, it's a dog whistle for homophobia. I mean, it can be, but you can't just say that there's no middle ground here to give people.
No, Sitch, you have to watch. If you don't watch, you're a transphobe.
Of course.
Your whole church group has to watch.
You know, and there's also, and she talks about this later in the video, there's this sort of total hypocrisy here because right now she's castigating this concept of sexual preferences, right? So she's saying it's not a preference. It's apparently something you're born with.
Right.
That's the implication. I don't know what her actual position
Even
is.
though ice cream is a preference and it's something you're born with too. But anyway,
right.
Let's move on.
Well, no, but because then this also complicates the whole trans issue because it's like, wait a minute, if a trans woman wants to date a man and that man considers himself straight and the trans woman still has, you know, a penis, how does that work? And yet
he's a transphobe.
Right, exactly. And then they say, well, wait a minute. If a man who considers himself straight doesn't want to have sex or be in a relationship with a trans woman who still has, you know, a penis or male genitalia, he's a transphobe. But yet, so she's making the counter. So they make the counter arguments. You're simultaneously you're transphobe if you don't want to go out with a woman with a penis, but you're also saying that sexual preferences should be not classified as preferences, and to do so is homophobic.
Yeah, so you're
Yeah,
shaming. Yeah, you're shaming straight people.
Right. It's a no-win scenario, basically, that's being concocted here. Concocted here.
This is just like the gay thing or the critical race thing, where if you go to you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. There's no right answer here.
Right, exactly. And that's why so much of the ideology feels like it's submit or die, because there's so many. And that's why I think you're correct in that you're classifying this as a religion, because there's so many contradictory beliefs and inconsistencies that if you question them, it's like, no, stop questioning. Just believe. Just shut up and follow along. Don't ask questions.
Shut up and follow along. Will there be more? Will there be free hot dogs at this party?
It's part of who you are, part of your humanity, and that's something that stays with you outside of the bedroom. So to dismiss it as sexual preferences is homophobic. Likewise, being trans is not a costume I take off at the end of the night. It's not a fashion choice. It's not a pet name some people call me. It's part of who I am as a person, It's part of my humanity. And it's also the kind of body I have, a transsexual.
But they're not really disrespecting her identity, though. Everyone respects her identity.
Well,
I guess in the bathroom situation, it's more difficult because that's where the disrespect comes in.
Well, I think some TERFs are to some extent, because they're saying, and this is the problem of their own creation, because the Wokistan people and the feminists have allowed the stupid, unscientific, false narrative that gender is a social construct to go on for so long. Then the TERFs turn around and say, oh, well, you being trans is a social construct.
Right.
And then the trans people say, well, by saying that I'm simply engaging in social construct, I'm being socially performative, you're basically denying my identity as a human being.
Can't they all just have like a Council of Nicaea thing and like work it out? They go, listen, our two positions are contradictory. We really need to come to some closure on this. Is gender a social construct or is it biological?
Right.
And then they can just decree. They come out with like the what was it? The Treaty of the Nicene Council papers or whatever.
Yes.
You go. And they're done with it. They think it. Then they can think it through.
But they don't want to
can televise it. They can put it on C-SPAN. It'll be great. It'll be entertaining television.
But to do that would be to cede power away from their movement.
They're really, I guess this is where the sectification is taking place here, because two sects are forming around this ideology, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
One's going to take away the gender as a social construct, and one's going to take away the biological component. But the problem is they're not really, they're just using those two contradictory arguments where it's convenient. They want both arguments.
Exactly. And that's why I'm saying they'll never publicly make that argument or cede this, because they want to be able to use the social construct argument when it benefits them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When they say that society is dominated by the patriarchy, blah, blah,
right.
blah,
we need
blah,
to
blah.
change society. We can perform whatever. Yeah. Yes.